Hey movement athletes, Jesse here. Today we'll be talking about how to minimize and avoid injuries in planches. So the first thing is that you don't want to do too much too soon. Too much of a loading and jump right into exercise and strain your shoulders and your elbows by locking them and doing too much force too soon. That's the first biggest way to injury. And then secondly, this can be reflected in your simple warm-up pattern. So you want to make sure you're properly warmed up. You want to make sure that your shoulders and wrists and elbows are ready. They'll take the brunt of the work here. Make sure that your shoulders are well balanced because planches are a push exercise. You want to make sure you're doing some pull-related work to retract the shoulders. Also how to bail out of a planche if you lean too far forward. So I'll be showing you a few things to hopefully avoid injury altogether, or at the very least, minimize them so they don't become a problem. So let's take a look. So one of the most important tips for avoiding injury is knowing how to bail out of a planche if you're too far forwards in your lean. So this is easily shown in the crow or frog position, which is one of the beginning progressions for the planche. And if you lean too far forwards, you should prepare to learn how to do a forward roll. You're already halfway through the roll by the time you're in the position itself. And of course, getting some mats nearby to make it softer, but knowing how to bail out of it. So learning a forward roll is a really smart idea. And in general, it's very likely that you'll be feeling like you need a face plant. And that's right before the threshold you want to be in planche training, but you do need to know how to bail out of it. And the forward roll is a prime skill to just transition and smooth out the roll from there, from a fall. So one of the first tips that we have for you when warming up before your planche is in regard to general preparation of the body and mobilization. So we'll be talking about different ways you can mobilize the wrist, get the shoulders ready, and some different stretches. So first one we'll do is with the lacrosse ball. So Jeremy's going to take the ball. We've got a bench for an elevated surface, and he's going to be doing a little bit of a myofascial release just by simply opening and closing the wrists as he glides over the ball with a medium set of pressure, maybe 3 or 4 on the pain scale. It should not be painful. You can try different surfaces of his forearms. So just trying to get this to relax and open up, different angles of closing and opening the wrist. So various positions for rolling this out. And the next exercise we'll be doing is going to be for, let's go to the shoulders next. So just laying face down and sinking into the ball, getting the anterior deltoids, doing some rolling, maybe some pauses with sinking onto the ball, and making sure that your breath is normal, right? Regular and normal. If you find that you're holding your breath or it's shallow, maybe you're digging too far, and that's definitely not where you want to be with this. You want to make sure that the brain is not perceiving this as a threat, but normal set of pressure to open things up. And then after this, we can flip over to our back. We'll get the trapezius. So again, just lining up the muscle that attaches to your neck and really goes pretty far down the back, the trapezius, and just finding some areas that are a little bit more tender and sinking there, pausing, breathing, just making sure that it feels good and ready to go before we get into the planche exercises you'll be doing later. And really, there's no wrong way to do this unless you're digging too hard into your body. You can do different contractions, relaxations, rolling, pausing, sinking, doing what feels good. Okay, after that, we can just do a couple of wrist leans and stretches because we need to make sure that we're preparing the wrist for the weight-bearing side. So Jeremy can just start doing some leans forwards. He can do circles, but obviously the more he leans, the more pressure his wrist will feel, but just preparing the wrist for any kind of leaning or position that they might be in. He can also turn the hands out to the side because this is how some of his planche work is going to be. And then finally, you can flip them around to face fingers towards his body. And this is going to be the biggest stretch. You'll feel a stretch in the forearms here. And again, just preparing for different ranges that they might be in for the planche. So this is key. This is going to be a big piece of avoiding injury, because if you skip this, your wrists are not going to like you. It's wise to, again, ramp up. Get the body warm, prepare the wrists, the shoulders, the trapezius, the muscles involved for the planche itself, and you'll be well on your way to having a more effective and more pain-free workout for planches. The next tip that we have for injury prevention is in regards to shoulder stability, just evening things out with your body. We spoke a lot about protraction with the shoulders, and that a planche is a push exercise, and this protraction is good for staying away from shoulder impingement. But if you're predominantly doing a lot of push all the time in this plane, you do want to balance things out by doing some pull work and working the whole shoulder girdle. So we're basically going to flip over the push up with a planche position and do some inverted rows. So Jeremy is showing us this exercise right now, and what he's trying to do is squeeze the scapula and pull his chest as close to the bar as possible. And this is working the whole posterior side of the body, and obviously posterior deltoids, the scapula. So this is to help even things out and make sure you have good balance in your training, where you don't want only push exercises. This is a horizontal pull movement, and you can also add vertical pull movements such as rope climbing, pull-ups. So just making sure that you're doing some pull exercises to balance out all the pushing that you're doing with planche work. So the next important tip that we have for you for injury prevention is to simply add some pulling exercises to your workout. So this could be some horizontal pulling, some vertical pulling. We'll be showing you a horizontal row, which is a horizontal pull exercise. And you can also throw in some vertical, which would be something like rope climbs or pull-ups. So this tip is to add some pull work in addition to what you already have is push with your planching. The next set of tips we have for you are also in regard to warming up properly. So we'll be going over shoulder movements and talking about the gradual loading of just lock arm positioning. So we'll do a couple things here. We'll first start on this quadruped position, and we'll do some depressing and retracting and protracting of the shoulders here. You can see the big difference in the scapula and the fact that you've got to be able to warm up the anterior serratus and the stabilizers here. And then once he is ready at the top, we can either lean forwards and backwards. So Jeremy will show us this planche leaning, again, gradually warming up the shoulders for this kind of stress that we'll be giving it. The other thing he could have done from that quadruped was simply just straighten his legs out, right? So we'll do one where straight legs. This can be the retracting, protracting the shoulders in this position to make it harder. Could also be done with different hand positions. And then of course that planche lean that we were just showing you in the quadruped. So again, gradually ramping up with the stress that your shoulders and wrists need to go through, and in addition to the lock arm strength, then positioning that your elbows are going through. So that's perfect. That's a good example. And like I said, we're talking about a few different things in this tip. Gradual loading of the lock arm strength. If you're not used to locking your arms out, this is a simple way to just start with a smaller body with less stress, gradually putting more on top of the wrists and elbows, and then starting to lean forwards with it. So you don't want to do too much too soon. If you have hyperextended elbows, this can tend to stress it much faster, and that might mean you need to engage your bicep a little bit, but just introducing this lock arm strength is key. And then we're warming up the shoulders to get ready for the planche. So a couple of good tips to reduce pain and potential injury there for the planche. The final tip that we have for you in regards to injury prevention or minimizing injury is using parallettes to avoid the hyperextension that happens in the wrist for planches. So if you simply use parallettes, your wrist will be in a more neutral position. And if you can see, Jeremy will do a couple different positions, a plank, a planche lean, and you'll see that the wrist is far more neutral in this position than it would be if it was on the floor. A couple other things that you could do would be to even turn the parallettes in different directions, right? So turning it this way will really not hyperextend the wrist in any way. It's more of a natural position it'll be in. And this could also be done on the floor too, right? So the most common thing that'll happen with planche training is wrist pain. And if you simply turn the position of your hands or use parallettes, Same goes with handstands, right? A lot of weight on top of the wrist. Your whole body weight is on top of the wrists. So using parallettes and making it more neutral will take away that pain probably immediately. So that's the final tip that we have for you for injury prevention. So that wraps up the video on injury prevention for the planche, and we spoke about a few key concepts. One of them being to properly warm up and prepare the body before doing the planche, and using the lacrosse ball for myofascial release and bringing blood to the area, warming up the shoulders, the wrists, the elbows, the traps, all the different muscles involved. Gradual increase of loading, not doing too much too soon. You have to know your limits. You don't want to lean too far or jump too far ahead in progressions with your planche training, but knowing your limits and staying within that, and just gradual progression with your training, and making sure there's rest, making sure that position is everything, right? If we're talking about wrists, making sure that the hands or the wrists are in the right position, making sure that the shoulders are protracted, pushing downwards to avoid shoulder impingement, and really engaging the right muscles to make sure you're spreading the load with it. Basically, that concludes the injury prevention. Hopefully you learned a lot, and making sure that you're keeping your body healthy while on your planche journey. But thanks for joining, and that concludes our video on injury prevention for the planche. Hey movement athletes, real quick, if you want to get better with your calisthenics and bodyweight training exercises, we have an amazing free course on planches as well as other bodyweight training exercises. And this guide has the best tips, tricks, mistakes that you want to avoid, progressions, and more. So make sure that you subscribe to our channel, like, comment, hit the bell for notifications, and make sure that you share with others. We want to make sure that we know what you want to see from us, engage with us, comment, hear about your updates. But enjoy the free course, and thank you guys.